Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Voter Engagement, Your Nonprofit's Role in Building an Inclusive Democracy. I'm Linda Czipo, President and CEO of the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits, and it is my honor and joy to MC today's session. Joining me from the center are my colleagues Danielle Robinson, Kathy Hahn, and Emma Wagner. We have a lot to cover today, and I'll be introducing our presenters in just a moment, but we will be recording today's briefing, and you will receive a link to the recording along with slides and other follow-up information by email following the session. If you have any questions or technical difficulties at any time, please enter your question into the chat box. We'll be holding Q&A until the end of the formal presentations, but feel free to put your questions in at any time, and if they are not answered during the course of the presentation or during Q&A, we will be sure to follow up afterward. For those of you who are not familiar with the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits, we are New Jersey's statewide nonprofit network and champion for the charitable nonprofit community. For more than 40 years, we've strengthened nonprofits individually and collectively through public policy, professional education and training, conferences, saving member programs, our statewide conference, and much more in order to improve the quality of life for all people of our state. The center is a proud member of the National Council of Nonprofits, which is the country's largest nonprofit network with more than 27,000 organizations in more than 40 states. The Council of Nonprofits is an advocate, a central coordinator, and mobilizer to help nonprofits achieve greater collective impact in local communities across the country. If you are not a member of the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits, we would like to encourage you to consider joining. For those of you who are members, we thank you for your support and involvement as we all pursue this work together. If you're not a member, we hope you'll consider joining and experience firsthand how membership can work for you. If you join by June 30th and use the discount code HORSENJ, the state animal, you can save 10% on your dues, and we'll repeat this offer toward the end of the broadcast. Before we begin, I just wanted to call your attention to a couple of upcoming events that we have in the works at the center. First is our open house here at our office in Mercerville. This is something we do annually, and it's a great chance to see old friends, make new ones. It is free, but we will ask for registration so that we can keep track of the head count. All of these events will be on our website, including registration information, which we will open soon. Secondly, on August 13th, we will be partnering with the Council of New Jersey Grant Makers to present our first ever joint policy forum. This will be held at the Heldrich in New Brunswick. Registration will open next week with deep discounts for members of the council or the center. If you are interested in how nonprofits and philanthropy can partner together to advance stronger public policies, you won't want to miss this. And also, as an aside, next week, the council is hosting their annual colloquium focused on AI and nonprofits and philanthropy, so you won't want to miss that either. All of these things are on our website, and you also won't want to miss our annual conference, which will be December 4th in Somerset. It will sell out. It's 600 plus people, great day of energy and networking and learning and inspiration. We'll be opening registration for that in September, so stay tuned there. You can find information about these and all sorts of other events on our events page, so please make a point of checking that out. Just a quick reminder, this is not a legal presentation, so nobody here is giving legal advice. So if you have any legal issues regarding your own situation, definitely contact an attorney, and we can also suggest some if you are interested. So with all that, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. There is no way to overstate how important today's topic is. Voter engagement is beyond critical, especially given the times that we are living in, and nonprofits have a vital role to play and a powerful role to play, and it has an impact, and you'll be hearing about that during the course of the presentation. So you're going to hear a lot about what the rules are, but how important things are, and a lot of how-to from our expert presenters, starting with Gwen Stembridge, the Education and Partnerships Coordinator at Nonprofit Vote. She will kick things off, and she will be followed by Melissa Marks, Senior Organizer at the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. We are so proud to partner with both of them and both of their organizations over many years. So let me stop there and encourage Gwen to take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Linda. I'm so grateful to be here and glad that you all are ready to do some voter engagement this year. I know it's incredibly important all of the years, and this year is one of those. So thanks so much. So a little bit about Nonprofit Vote, in case you're not familiar. We are a national organization that supports nonprofits like you to do voter engagement and voter education. And particularly, we provide tools and resources. We've got a resource library, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but we also partner a lot with nonprofit associations and nonprofits like you all to really build a more inclusive democracy. And we'll talk about why you all as nonprofit leaders are key in that. So some of you all might be surprised by these numbers and some might not be, but according to our data, and this is a report that we did with some other organizations with independent sector and some others, but about 1 in 5 nonprofits in general do voter engagement. We're right at about 20%. That number may feel really high for some of you, and it may feel really low. I personally might be biased, but I think this number is pretty low. I think there are a lot more nonprofits that can do voter engagement, and that's why we're here to give you the tools that you need to make that happen. I want to talk a little bit about why nonprofits in particular. So many of you, especially this year and especially around this time, you're probably receiving text messages, emails, mailings, all kinds of information from campaigns about the election, right? I know in my state where I live, South Carolina, we just had an election. Yesterday, we just had a primary, and I was getting all of this information from campaigns, but not really information from anywhere else. So all the information that I was getting was partisan in nature. So campaigns do this because they reach out to likely voters. So they're able to just go through those list of voter information. Again, let me just clarify here that the information about who you vote for is not public, but the information about whether or not you vote is public information. And so campaigns get that information. They say, who has voted over the past 8 years, let's say? And the people who have voted most often, they say, we're going to reach out to those people with our, limited resources, and we're going to encourage those people to vote, because if we encourage those people to vote, then they're more likely to vote for us and we're more likely to get elected. So the people who haven't voted in a while or are labeled in some way as less likely voters, they're not getting that regular information about voting. Could be just as simple as, where is your voting location? What is the date? What are the rules about voting early or voting absentee or by mail? They're not getting any of that information. So campaigns in general, you can see from this loop, campaigns are not making contact. And so then people don't vote. And then those folks who don't vote are then labeled as unlikely voters. And the cycle begins again because campaigns are not reaching out to them. So we really need a new system here. And that's where nonprofits offering nonpartisan voting information come in and can really change that system. So when we have nonprofits that engage, then we have people who are voting, and it's people who have been left out of some systems, and that's often people that nonprofits are serving, right? If you're a food bank, if you are providing housing resources, language resources and culturally appropriate care, for families or things like that, then you are including folks that have been in some way excluded from the system. So, and bringing them into that system as they are a voter, and then they're getting more of that information, and our democracy can be more representative of actually who is living in our communities. And we have the data to back that up. I don't want to come here and tell you lots of exciting things and not bring the data with it. The Nonprofit Power Report just came out this past March, just a couple of months ago. And we found this year that voters who are engaged by nonprofits are 10 percentage points more likely to actually follow through and vote. So that's a big number. That's a really big difference that those nonprofits are making. And that's you all, right? That's you all doing direct service, whatever kind of work you're doing when you are doing when you're doing that nonpartisan voter engagement, you are making that difference. So those gaps, we've got these gaps in particular that exist along race, income, and age. Those are just some in particular. So it's really important that those that those groups have an equal representation within our democracy. And so that's again where you all come in. Another thing about this data is that not only did we find that the kind of nonprofit bump was 10 percentage points, but then that number went up when we just separated out voters of color, went up to 12 percentage points. 15 percentage points for those earning between 20 and 30,000 a year, and then 14 percentage points for young voters, 18 to 24. So this is all just that nonprofit impact. The folks who were contacted by nonprofits about voter engagement were this much more likely to follow through and vote. You can find out more about the Nonprofit Power Report here, and I'll also put this link in the chat. And I believe you all will get this this PowerPoint at the end of the session, so you can read more about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's special about this election. So yes, it is a presidential election year, and I often hear people say, "Oh, it's an election year," and I want to say, election year is every year. Every year we have elections. And even throughout the year, we often have primaries or special elections or runoffs or other things. So it's really just important to remember that every year is an election year. And you can be doing this work, incorporating it into your outreach year round and all the time. And it's going to make it a lot easier than trying to scramble, in October to get everything ready for an election in November. So a couple things to just remember about this year. It is not just about the presidential election. There are 468 seats that we're voting for in the US Congress. That's Senate and House. There's appellate court seats. We're voting for judges. There are statewide ballot measures. This was just as of when I got this information. I think there are a few more ballot measures that have already been added in states across the country. And then there's also elections at the state level and at the local level. So often the issues that are really directly impacting communities and some of the issues that you all as nonprofits are working on, a lot of times those decisions are actually made by people who are representing more locally than the president, for instance. It's the mayors, it's the members of the zoning boards, it's folks like that that are making those more direct decisions. So really important just to include that in your outreach. It's also, I just want to note, it has been 4 years since 2020 and since this pandemic drastically shifted the presidential election. And so it's still important to take those safety and health precautions, but also check on your state election laws, because there are things that may have changed or things that may still be changing. A lot of things, registration is now more widely available online, and we'll get into the more specifics of New Jersey laws in particular, but don't make assumptions that things are the same as they were 4 years ago. It's really the thing to remember here. So let's talk about what a 501c3 nonprofit can do. I'm so glad Linda gave the reminded us that this is not, none of this is legal advice. I am not an attorney. This is not legal advice. But there is there are plenty of activities that nonprofits are able to do. So you can conduct nonpartisan voter engagement activities. So some examples of these are voter registration, voter education about times and locations and just information that's specific to your community. You can talk about who is going to be on the ballot. You can say, this is who we're voting for. This is the names of these candidates. You're able to say those things. That is just in general voter information that you're giving. You don't want to give a preference for any of those or show any kind of bias there, but that voter education, as long as it is equal on all sides, you are generally good to go. You can also do some candidate engagement. So candidate forums, I'm a big fan of League of Women Voters and a lot of the things that you all are able to do, especially with candidates and getting that information to communities so that they know who they're voting for and what their values are and what they're going to do once they're elected in office. So there's the voter registration side of things. And then there's after folks are registered, after that voter registration deadline, then there's get out the vote. So once folks are registered, then making sure that they have a plan to vote, making sure that they have all the information that they need to actually get there. So here's some common nonpartisan activities, and I talked through a little bit of this, but hosting a registration drive. Also, I'll give a shout out here for National Voter Registration Day. We're the managing partner for that, and you can also become a partner. It's a free partnership, and you can get all kinds of tools around National Voter Registration Day, posters and stickers and buttons and all kinds of swag that you can use to support your National Voter Registration Day efforts and activities. A couple other ideas here, providing sample ballots and information on where to research those candidates. You can hold mock elections so that voters can practice. Sometimes this is a good idea with younger voters or with voters who with people who haven't voted before, or maybe they're coming from a different country where voting was not part of their habit there. So really good to just get people familiar with that, because often you get into the voting booth and it's a new experience and you're not sure what to do. So this can be really, really helpful. These are just some ideas. And then just a word about nonpartisanship in general. So what nonpartisanship means is that you are not supporting one candidate or the other. So you cannot endorse or oppose a candidate or a political party. And this explicitly or implicitly is really important as well, right? And includes nonpartisan offices. If there's a position, sometimes, a mayor is not necessarily associated with a partisan office. So you cannot donate money or resources to a candidate. If you are going to offer space to hold events, then you need to offer that equally to any candidate or any party that's going to do that. And that's only if you offer that space anyway. You cannot conduct partisan election-related activity. Just say no, thank you if a political party wants to, partner with you in that way. You can also not give out prizes or incentives to register to vote. This is a little bit of a line that folks walk sometimes. If you are tabling at a festival, for instance, and you have voter registration there, and you also have, let's say, swag or candy or something that you're giving out, it is still okay to have that swag or that candy. You just can't require someone to register to vote in order to get that. You can just give it out freely, whether or not someone actually registers. So that's just some clarification I like to give there. And then how can nonprofit vote in general help you? There's so much more we could talk about, but I'm gonna make sure my colleagues have some time here. So we have a webinar series. You can also watch those webinars on our YouTube channel. If you are a funder, we've got a Philanthropy for Voter Engagement initiative, because we know that you all as nonprofits cannot do this work unless you get the funding to do it and the support to do it. And then you can also visit our resource library for all kinds of tools and templates. We have checklists and timelines that you can kind of fill in yourself, printable materials, all kinds of things. And then you can become a National Voter Registration Day partner and get a really cool mug here from their swag store. A couple of the resources I wanted to just shout out. There's a working with candidates guide, candidate questionnaires and voter guides. And then this webinar in particular, there's a tool that you can use. It's like a Word document that you can kind of fill in, assess your capacity and all of that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know we're going to take some questions in at the end, but at this time, I'm going to pass it back to Linda.
Thank you so much, Gwen. And just as a reminder, everybody, please continue to put your questions in the chat. If there's something we can't get to today, we will definitely follow up. There's lots of great technical information available from Nonprofit Vote, from League of Women Voters, from us, from Council of Nonprofits, and others. So much more to come, but now it is my pleasure to turn things over to Melissa.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to pull up my slides quickly. First of all, thank you all for having me. My name is Melissa Marks. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a senior organizer with the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. So thank you so much to the center for having me. Thank you to Gwen for starting us off. A lot of great information provided already, so I'll just do my best to build off of all of that. A little bit about the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. We encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We're proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but we're always working on vital issues of vital concern to members and the public. The things I have in this slide include voting access in New Jersey, important New Jersey voting information, voter services actions that you can take, nonpartisan voter outreach, so just kind of building on what Gwen's already gone over there, and how you can get involved with the league or on your own. If I don't get to everything here, that's totally fine. I'll, share the resources and you can all, reach out if you have additional questions later. But I always like to start these conversations off by thinking about why somebody might not be registered to vote or why someone might not, be a consistent voter. You don't have to respond in the chat, I'll just kind of go on to the next thing, but feel free to share anything that I missed that comes to mind, that you think, somebody might come up to your voter registration table or might come up to you and say, I'm not registered. Why might that be? Or they might say, I'm not voting. Why might that be? And the thing is that there are a lot of different reasons that this might be the case. For example, just registering or voting requires a lot of time and a lot of energy just to even know that you are an eligible voter or to know that, how to register or when the dates of the election are, when the deadlines that you have to not miss are. So it's really important to always remember that someone might not be not registered or not voting, not because of anything that's their fault, right? They're busy. If this is not somebody's number one priority, they might not realize, they might not know, they might not get the information like Gwen was saying. So that's a huge reason why somebody might not be engaged. Another reason is that, their voter registration status may have changed. So folks move, they change their names, they become a new citizen, they return from serving a sentence, maybe they just turned 17. There are a lot of change of life scenarios in which somebody would have to re-register. And again, just knowing that that's the case and getting it done while you're moving, from state to state or whatever it is, it can be a big task. Somebody might not believe that their vote matters. So people from marginalized groups might not see good choices. If you don't see a candidate that, you feel is reflective of who you are, of how you feel, then it's going to be harder for you to, again, go through all the motions and put all the time and energy into actually voting. So it's really important that we have more people running, more opportunities for you to see yourself reflected in candidates. And then, of course, there are systematic barriers to the ballot that do make it more difficult to participate. And these are some examples that some of these do happen in New Jersey, some of these happen elsewhere. It's important to remember that there are systematic barriers in place, today. So some examples of these can be voter ID laws, cuts to voting hours or early voting, polling place consolidations or closures, voter roll purges, restricting mail-in ballot, requirements or access, gerrymandering, voter intimidation, felony disenfranchisement, accessibility issues for voters with disabilities, language access issues. And this is not a finite list. There's definitely more things that can act as structural barriers. So it's really important to keep this in mind when we start engaging in voter outreach and engaging with voters. Because we want to enter conversations with voters with this in mind. So considering all of the reasons why somebody might not be a voter, and that way we're not assigning blame. We're not assuming that we know that somebody isn't registered and it's their fault, or they're not voting because they're apathetic, right? That's not a good way to enter these conversations with voters. So instead of focusing on strategies to combat apathy, we want to be focusing on why somebody might not be voting and helping them address those underlying issues that they're facing. But I also like to focus on the positives. In New Jersey, there have been a lot of good voting access legislation in the last handful of years. Automatic voter registration at the MVC is great. Access to the ballot. Online voter registration, it makes it so much easier for us to register in New Jersey. Rights restoration, folks that were formerly incarcerated citizens can vote, register and vote again. And vote by mail during COVID was an example of how, again, we expanded and open access to the ballot. And then 2021, New Jersey since then they've had in-person early voting, which is another huge access to the ballot initiative. So let's go through the basics quickly. Who can register and vote in New Jersey? You must be a U.S. citizen. You must be at least 17 years old, but keep in mind that you can register when you're 17. You just can't actually cast your ballot until you're 18. You have to be a resident of the county for 30 days before the election, and you must not be serving a sentence of incarceration as a result of a conviction of any indictable offenses under the laws of this state or the U.S. And then keep in mind that the voter registration deadline is always 21 days before an election in order to vote in that election. So quick reminder that a citizen is eligible to register in New Jersey if they are on parole or probation. They just must re-register to vote once they've completed their prison sentence, even if they were a registered voter prior to their conviction. So that's an important education piece for us all to keep in mind. A citizen is eligible to register if they're serving time for a misdemeanor or a civil matter, and they can vote from jail using a vote by mail ballot. A citizen is eligible to register if they have been charged but not sentenced as well. So this includes if they're out on bail, pending appeal, that kind of thing. And I wanted to, again, flag online voter registration because it's a great way to send information to, your network and to help folks register. When you're doing events, consider having QR codes visible on your tables to online voter registration. You can still offer to help folks registering to vote, just like you would with the physical voter registration form. Ask if they were able to successfully complete their application and offer to help with anything that, might be getting in their way. All right, I'm going to go through some election dates and deadlines. And the first thing I'm going to start with is the special primary election in Congressional District 12. Resources, vote411.org, our website, lwvnj.org/vote, and then vote.nj.gov is New Jersey State Voter Information Portal, and it has everything you could possibly need to know. So it's a really great resource. But New Jersey is having a special primary and it's coming up soon. So that's why I wanted to share these deadlines. New Jersey Congressional District 12 is a special primary, for that office. So June 25th is the voter registration deadline. July 9th is the vote by mail application deadline if you're applying by mail. July 12th to 14th is in-person early voting. For that election. July 15th is the vote by mail application in person. And then July 16th is election day for that special primary election. I know I glossed over a bunch of info, so I'll go into more detail here where I go over the 2024 general election dates and deadlines for the New Jersey general election coming up. So the voter registration deadline for this election is October 15th. That's the deadline for applications by mail or online. And if folks are registering by mail, it's a postmark date. So, try to make sure that if you're getting right up onto that deadline, you're encouraging folks to register online rather than playing with the postmark deadline. In-person early voting, like I mentioned, is relatively new in New Jersey, and it's an amazing opportunity for folks to be able to cast their ballot. We work on Tuesday. Sometimes it can be hard to get to the polls. Things come up. So we're really excited to encourage voters to actually participate in early voting, and they can vote from October 26th to November 3rd at any early voting polling location in their county. So it might not be the same polling location as they would use on election day, but they can go to any of the early voting locations in the whole county. And those polls will be open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on those weekdays and Saturday, and then from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that Sunday. The vote by mail application deadline. So in New Jersey, anyone can vote by mail. You don't need an excuse or a reason or anything like that, but you do have to apply. So folks do have to hit these application deadlines. You can either, when you apply, say, check a box that says I'd like to receive vote by mail ballots in all elections moving forward, and then you don't have to keep applying, or you can just say you want it for the next election, and then you can make your decision again after that. But the application deadline for this November general election is October 29th if folks are applying by mail. So that's when the mail application would have to be received by the county clerk by. November 4th is the vote by mail application deadline if folks are applying in person. And so that option is for going to the county clerk's office by, I have June 3 here, sorry about that, by 3 p.m. on November 4th. And then I have primary election here as well. Sorry, you can see I was updating my slides. But November 5th is the 2024 general election in New Jersey, and the polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. All right, so I'll briefly talk about some activities that as nonprofits we can engage in. And I'll go through a couple of best practices and then share resources for more information on all of these. But voter registration, of course, is such an important thing that we can all do. Gwen already, alluded to a lot of important things, but we have an opportunity to reach a lot of people that aren't necessarily always being reached with this information. So direct service organizations doing voter registration and voter education is key. And like Gwen said, in New Jersey, there is always an election. We have off-year elections. So right now we have, the federal elections, but next year we're going to have statewide elections for state Senate and state assembly. So keep that in mind. There's always an election. There's always a primary. There's a local election sometimes in May and April, depending on where you live. So there's always elections to be working on here. And so that means you can do your voter registration drives at any time. You don't just have to do them around the voter registration deadline, because it's probably always some sort of voter registration deadline coming up. So consider, planning for a strong push around a deadline, but don't limit yourself to only, doing voter registration around the federal election deadlines, for example. It's always a good time to register, folks. I have a couple of best practices for, as you're thinking about starting to do this. Here's some guiding questions you might want to ask yourself. How many locations of voters will we target to help you assess your capacity? How many volunteers will we need to reach those goals? How much cost will we incur, and how can we, fundraise for that? What community allies and partners can we work with? And then I want to talk a little bit about target audiences. Again, Gwen mentioned this already, but as nonpartisan nonprofits, we have a unique opportunity to approach voters in a different way and to approach different voters. I might turn away when a partisan group comes to me because I don't want to engage in that conversation. I've had it a million times. It's not something I want to do. But when a nonpartisan group approaches me and says, hey, are you registered? We're not asking you to vote for a specific person. We're just asking you to vote because it's important. And that's what, we believe. That's a different way to approach me. So definitely consider that. How can you approach your target audiences? Who are your target audiences? And can you find folks that might be left out from, other typical voter outreach? We focus on low propensity voters when we do our get out the vote. So we focus on specifically finding people that do not typically vote regularly. And then we also focus on different target audience that we think might, need or, just might be available to reach. So again, thinking about change of life situations, and I'll get to that in a moment. But there's lots of different places that you can do voter registration, not just the farmers market, but partnering with faith communities, with food pantries. You might be a food pantry. That's awesome. Libraries, resource centers, post offices, events in town. There's so many different ways that you can reach people. So really being creative and thinking about that. And then again, thinking about your targeting. So we target new citizens, folks that are just becoming naturalized citizens. That's a change of life opportunity for us to get, get it on the ground right away. Formerly incarcerated citizens, again, they might not know that they can vote. They need to re-register. So that's a great opportunity to connect with folks there. Young voters, again, they're about to become eligible to vote, or they recently did. Think about personal networking. People in your own network might need the information. And then other things like, recently married folks or changed their names or remarried, relocations. Keep in mind, if there is a gender reassignment, to help folks know that or identification change, the voter must make sure that the name on their ID matches the name on their registration. I have more best practices for voter registration. We have tips for how to organize before the event, what to do during the event, and then also what to do after the event. And so I'll share the voter registration toolkit, and you can kind of pick and choose what's relevant for you there. But moving on to voter education, again, something else you can do, super important. Vote4in1.org is our way of gathering candidate information and making it accessible to voters. So we try to get all the local elections, as many as we can, all the way up to, the president. And it's our way for having folks, look at who's going to be on the ballot, what offices are running, what candidates are running for these offices. And then we have a nonpartisan questionnaire that we ask them to fill out so that they're directly in their own words telling voters what they think, what their plans are, why they should get the vote. So that's a great nonpartisan resource. We definitely encourage you to do town halls, talk about important issues in your communities, invite groups, invite speakers, invite leaders to town halls, community discussions or presentations, doing educational presentations. We're always happy to come in and help with those too. And then of course we do candidate forums like Gwen mentioned. So we're always looking for partners for candidate forums. We try to do as many local candidate forums as we can. We have, 30 local leagues around the state, but we always need help because when it's just the league saying, hey, come to the forum, it's important, voters want to hear you, it's not quite as powerful when it's the league and the local food pantry and this nonprofit and that nonprofit and this business. So we're always looking for folks to help us encourage candidates to come to these forums and participate and talk directly to their voters. I'll briefly get into get out the vote. Gwen already mentioned this as well, of course, but the goal of Get Out the Vote is to drive voters to the poll. So think of it as the accumulation of the voter outreach that you've done. All voter registration drives, webinars, the conversations that you had, all of that lead to about 2 weeks of getting out the vote right before the election. Why do we get out the vote? Because it actually works. Because voter turnout is low, especially in New Jersey, especially in those off-year elections, and because we don't want any voters to be left behind. Some things that you can do: canvassing, lit dropping, postcard writing, phone banking, text banking, even sending email reminders, using social media. These are all forms of get out the vote, and they're not restricted to just partisan groups, right? We can all engage in these as long as we're doing it in a nonpartisan way. So think of your Get Out the Vote campaign as a comprehensive approach to supporting voters. Go beyond voter registration and think about the consistent messaging that you want to give to your target audiences. Think about who your target audience is and how can we best reach them to get those final reminders to get out the vote. When you're thinking about messaging from a nonpartisan standpoint, you want to focus on getting out information. So the process of voting, right? Hey, you can vote by mail. This is the deadline if you want to do so. What is your plan? When are you voting? Did you know that early voting is an awesome opportunity in New Jersey? You can vote this weekend. So all of these important educational pieces are how we as nonpartisan groups can focus our Get Out the Vote messaging. Our goals are to increase participation. We don't care who folks are voting for. We're not increasing participation for Democrats or Republicans or independents. We're increasing participation period across the board. So focus on addressing any barriers that are in the way of voters and removing those barriers. But, in a hyper-partisan era that we are living in, we can also be a different and approach to voters who feel left out or put off by that other messaging. Gwen already did some do's and don'ts, so I'll just go over a few. But, and this is league specific, but applies to all of our nonprofits, of course. Make sure that all of your members, all of your volunteers are trained to remain nonpartisan during voter outreach events before they start engaging in those. Don't just assume that people understand what that means. Take the time to train them. Always consider the perception of your partnerships and your volunteer roles as well. I might know that Nancy it means well and is not partisan, but what activities is Nancy involved in, and how can that be perceived by other groups? So don't, make sure you're thinking of all the angles when you're doing this work. Keep policy work and voter service work separate. So we do advocacy, we engage in bills and legislation, but we separate that. We have a hard line. We don't ever bring any of our campaigns to our voter outreach events. So do encourage people to register to vote, discuss vote by mail, and answer questions with nonpartisan factual information. Do advertise upcoming nonpartisan candidate forums and resources like Vote 4-on-1. Do direct voters to resources like Vote 4-on-1 and other nonpartisan guides when talking about candidates. Do encourage voters to participate in all elections and explain why voting is important to you. Do not engage in partisan discussions. So it's really important to prohibit any side conversations. Some folks might, if there's a lull in the event, start talking about a candidate or an issue or this or that just between the two of them, but you want to cut that out. You don't want side conversations. That's just not going to go well. And always assume that someone can overhear you. Engage in conversations. Do not engage in conversations or distribute material about, again, positions or advocacy stances or bills or things like that at your voter outreach events. Consider all the partners and evaluate them before engaging in activities. Candidates are prohibited from participating in our voter outreach events. So don't, include candidates, even if they're saying, hey, I'm taking my candidate hat off. I'm not going to do that here. Just a hard line. Don't engage candidates in your voter outreach events. And then never answer who you are voting for. So if someone asks you, don't say, oh, I'm taking my league hat off. I'm going to tell you who I'm voting for. Like, no, don't do that. Just direct them to nonpartisan resources like Vote 4-on-1. And so here are some tips on how you can navigate those challenging conversations. If someone assumes you're a Democrat or Republican, don't automatically yell back. It's an easy assumption to make. We live in a really hyper-partisan time. People are skeptical about anything nonpartisan, but that's okay because you know that you are nonpartisan, right? And just remind folks that we're not here to discuss specific policy. We're just here to help as many people register and participate in the election as we possibly can, and then direct them to your resources, and all of that. So we have this validate, correct, redirect that you can use in these tricky conversations. Validate the underlying thought or emotion, correct misinformation, and then redirect back to the issue at hand. So you might say, I can understand why you might think that, but the league is nonpartisan. We're talking to everyone about voting today, not just members of one party, and then go back to whatever you went. So are you registered? Is your voter registration up to date? I'll kind of skip through some of these. Here's a resource I'll share for helping to make your own campaign plan if you do want to do so. I know Gwen has a similar resource as well. This is the New Jersey voter information portal that has so many important things. So you can always send your voters here. Register to vote, 3 ways to vote, early voting, polling locations, vote by mail, student voting. So definitely send folks there. I always like to encourage people to also recruit for poll workers because people can earn money. Great way to earn money. This is an old screenshot, so ignore the dates. And go to send folks to pollworker.nj.gov to learn more and to apply. This is Vote 4 in 1, our resource for candidates. And then I'd love to encourage folks to, reach out if you would like to partner with us. We have a form that I made. You can let us know if you're interested in partnering on voter registration, voter education. We have youth voter education programs where we can go into middle school, high school, colleges, trade schools, and do different lessons, including a mock election with the kids. Candidate forums, any presentations or get out the vote. So, feel free to fill out this form or just reach out to me if you're interested in partnering on anything. And we have more trainings that go into more detail on everything that I've mentioned. So you can check out our training program at lwvnj.org/training. The voter outreach one is probably what you're most interested in if you're here today. And we'll get more into detail on all of that. And that's all that I have. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Gwen. A lot of great information to hopefully whet people's appetites if they weren't already. And we have perfect on time as far as time for Q&A and whatnot. So there were some great questions in the chat, so I'll dive into that. Do want to mention a clarification. The special election for the special primary is CD10. Yes.
So sorry. Thank you for that.
And we'll fix that before the slides go out. But there was another great question that Orville Morales posted, and that has to do with that line between dealing with candidates who are incumbents and wearing their government hat. And the precise question is, what if the candidate is also the incumbent and wants to do a town hall on an important issue with the nonprofit? Can they do it in their capacity as a government official as opposed to the candidate? Gwen, do you want to start off to take that?
Yeah, happy to. So this is one of those things that the IRS will look at the facts and circumstances test. That's how they determine, whether or not something is partisan. And so an example that I give, I have my city council person will send out a newsletter, and it happens it's like right before the elections. And we're always like, that's really, really convenient that now, like, we don't hear from this person very often, but hear from them, of course, right around election time. And even though, she's doing that from her capacity as a current elected official, it's like, that timing is just a little a little interesting. Now you decide to reach out. And so I think that's one of the things you need to just pay attention to with those. Is that a red flag that you need to pay attention to, right? Is there if this candidate, this incumbent, this current elected official, if they are regularly doing town halls with you, or if it's an annual thing or a monthly thing, or they're doing it with different organizations, then that might be okay. That might not have as many flags. But if it's something that they just decided to happen to do in September or October, there's going to be some red flags there that you're going to want to look out for. And I would, this is not legal advice, but I would caution you to not do that around that time because it just could be interpreted in that way. So I think be really careful around that. Look at all of the facts and circumstances, because that's what the IRS will do. So I hope that answers that.
For people who have more questions, put them in the chat. That's probably the best way. That way we all have records of everything written as well. There was a question early on about, which I think was answered, but signing up for the voter registration day toolkit. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Again, I'll go back to Gwen for that, but also Melissa, if you also want to tag on that as far as voter registration resources as well, a little bit more about what's available.
Happy to take the first piece at that. And I think Sharonda, I think, is who asked that. And so I don't know if that's what your hand raised was about, but yes, sign up for the National Voter Registration Day toolkit. And you'll get all kinds of information there to be a community partner. And you might even, once you talk with the team there, you might even be a premier partner if you have an opportunity to also share that to the nonprofits in your network. So just be sure that you, that you register there, and there are questions about that you can answer. But lots of fun swag, and people love that, and posters and things where you can put your specific information, but has the general information there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just put a couple things in the chat. Here's the link to fill out the form if you're interested in partnering on anything. We have leagues all over the state, so I might end up, connecting you with a local league so that you can do things locally there, or we can do something at the more of a statewide level. And I also just put in the link for our voter registration toolkit. And so again, this is, League of Women Voters specific, but it applies, and you can definitely use the tips and best practices and things like that you find in there. And we're a resource, so even if it's not a partnership but you want to just ask questions or get some advice, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then the last link I'll put is our training program that I mentioned before. We're actually in between what we call semesters right now, but we did a bunch for the spring, and we'll do a bunch again in the fall. And I'm also happy to send recording. So if you want the voter registration training recording, or the Get Out the Vote recording, or the Navigating Nonpartisan Conversations recording, just let me know. I'm happy to send that as well.
Wonderful, thank you. We also have resources here at the center. We can either direct you to our friends at Nonprofit Vote, League of Women Voters. We can answer some questions ourselves. We've also have some written materials. This is probably a great time to point out a wonderful opportunity that's coming around in just a few weeks. We are so excited that through the National Council of Nonprofits and Nonprofit Vote, we will be partnering on a New Jersey specific voter engagement guide. Nonprofit Vote is putting the finishing touches on this as we speak, and we're chiming in with a couple of quick remarks. This is going to be out next month, so please stay tuned. Obviously, I'll make sure that everybody on who's registered for this webinar gets a copy and whatnot, but we'll be announcing it far and wide. But we could not be more excited about the opportunity to partner on that too. So stay tuned, and much more information on that. So thank you. Other questions in the chat? Things we did not get to. Well, I guess what I will do before I chime in with a couple of parting comments. Gwen, Melissa, do you have any parting thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Thank you, and we're here as a resource, but really, your friends here at New Jersey Center for Nonprofits and National Council of Nonprofits really just have your back, and I'm so grateful to you all for engaging in this work. It is so crucial. So thank you, and we're here to support you.
And same here. And it might seem like a lot, but just start small. So pick one thing, start from there, and then, I think you'll find that it was cool and worth it, and you can build up. So yeah. But thank you so much to New Jersey Center for Nonprofits and to Nonprofit Vote. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Gwen, Melissa, to both of your organizations and for everything that you're doing every day. Just a quick reminder, we'll be getting out the follow-up information and the slides from today shortly, within the next couple of days, along with a link to the recording and lots of other information. Just a friendly reminder, if you're not a member of the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits, we certainly invite you to join, and you can get a discount if you join by June 30th. And if you have any questions, information, we are here. That's why we are here, to help you, to champion what you're doing. And we certainly encourage you to get in touch with us. And if there's anything that we missed from today that you would like to follow up on, by all means, please email us. This will conclude the formal presentation. For now, let me thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you to Melissa Marks and Gwen Stembridge. Thanks to my colleagues, Danielle, Kathy, and Emma. And we look forward to staying in touch. We thank you for everything that you're doing in the community.